The village of Dalton is more than $3.5 million in the hole. Mayor Tiffany Henyard is accused of misusing money, and today she's nowhere to be found.
Very, very diligently, very hard under difficult circumstances to get as much information as we could to share with you.
She thinks she's going to jail. I'm also a former Cook County Sheriff for the Department of Corrections, and I suggest that she go and take a tour of that facility so she can see what's in store for her.
The downfall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, a legacy of controversy. Corruption in leadership is nothing new, but Mayor Tiffany Henyard has pushed it to a breaking point. For years, she maneuvered through scandals, evading accountability with political theatrics and power plays. But now, with federal investigators circling, her carefully crafted empire is crumbling. The walls are closing in, and this time, there's no escape. Let's unravel the rise and impending fall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard. A controversial ascent to power. Tiffany Henyard's journey to office wasn't a conventional election win. Instead, she secured her position through a Board of Trustees appointment following the passing of former Mayor Frank Zuccarelli. State law required the Thornton Township Board to fill the vacancy within 60 days, and the leading contenders were longtime trustee Joyce Washington and Township Assessor Jerry Jones. But politics is rarely predictable. While the public assumed the selection process was spontaneous, it later emerged that Henyard had quietly positioned herself for the role well before it was even vacant. As the deadline loomed and the board remained divided, trustee Christopher Gonzalez made a last-minute nomination, Tiffany Henyard. With time running out, the trustees cast their votes, and just like that, she was sworn in before the stroke of midnight. Henyard was elated. "I didn't see it coming. I love it. That means I am truly blessed, and everyone loves me," she gushed. But behind closed doors, suspicions swirled. Did the board deliberately bypass the public to serve its own agenda? If so, that decision would soon come back to haunt them. The power grab begins. At first, Henyard's leadership appeared unremarkable. She gave the usual speeches, promising transparency, responsibility, and dedication to the people of Thornton Township. "I was the people's trustee, and now I am the people's mayor and the people's supervisor," she declared. But it didn't take long for cracks to form. Henyard quickly set her sights on those with ties to her predecessor, singling them out as threats rather than allies. Whispers of a personal vendetta began circulating, especially when she started dismantling key members of the administration. Her first major move? The abrupt and unexplained firing of longtime employee Jessica Jones. Trustee Jerry Jones initiated the motion, Joyce Washington seconded it, and the vote was shockingly unanimous. Then came the removal of Stephanie Weidman. This time, the vote wasn't unanimous. Christopher Gonzalez opposed, but it didn't matter. Henyard had spoken. The fired employees were blindsided. "I received a text saying, 'I'm so sorry they let you go.' It was out of nowhere, no warning, no explanation," Weidman later revealed. The message was clear. Henyard wasn't interested in collaboration. She was consolidating power. A reign fueled by fear. Instead of relying on experienced officials, Henyard systematically removed them, replacing them with individuals she could control. Critics argued that her insecurities, not strategy, drove these decisions. Rather than proving herself as a capable leader, she sought to dominate, silencing anyone who challenged her authority. As she tightened her grip, the township grew restless. Her erratic leadership, unexplained firings, and growing list of adversaries didn't go unnoticed. Residents began asking the inevitable question: was Henyard serving the community or serving herself? Under investigation, the noose tightens. Henyard's unchecked rule couldn't last forever. Eventually, her decisions drew the attention of federal investigators. Though the full scope of the probe remains undisclosed, speculation is rampant. Misuse of funds, abuse of power, and outright corruption top the list. Her usual tactics, deflection, intimidation, and narrative control, are no longer working. The once untouchable mayor now finds herself ensnared in a web of her own making. The tide has turned, and the weight of mounting evidence may prove too great to escape. What's next for Thornton Township? As the investigation unfolds, Thornton Township faces an uncertain future. The residents who once supported Henyard are now demanding answers. The same board of trustees that ushered her into power may soon be forced to reckon with their decision. If Henyard is found guilty, the fallout won't end with her. There could be a broader reckoning within township leadership. One thing is clear: corruption has consequences. For years, Tiffany Henyard dodged accountability. But now, the walls are closing in, and this time, there's nowhere left to run. Stay tuned. We're only witnessing the beginning of the end. This version maintains the gripping tone while sharpening the narrative flow and making it more engaging.
Have confidential, sensitive papers that were in a common area.
This morning, some of those documents were gone.
Tiffany Henyard's latest actions have ignited yet another firestorm of controversy, with her attempts at damage control raising more questions than they answer. From bizarre justifications to outright deflections, Henyard's responses to mounting scrutiny only seem to highlight the cracks in her administration. Her latest debacle? Office space rearrangements that she claims were necessary due to heating issues affecting her efficiency. When Assessor Elston objected, Henyard dismissed the concerns as overblown, insisting the move was part of a broader initiative to prioritize citizen services. But skeptics quickly pointed out a glaring issue. There was no official record or public announcement to back up her claims. Even some of her supporters appeared unconvinced, with township members stepping forward to clarify that Henyard had never consulted them on major decisions. In a clumsy attempt to shift the narrative, one official urged the media to stop investigating township mismanagement and instead highlight accomplishments, like Thornton Township receiving a Government Finance Officers Association certificate for financial reporting. But this sudden pivot felt hollow, an obvious distraction from the growing unrest within the community. Spiritual justifications and media blame. Rather than directly addressing public concerns, Henyard's defenses have taken on an increasingly unusual tone, laced with religious overtones and defensive posturing. As frustrations with her leadership mount, rumors of incompetence have spread, adding to the already tense atmosphere surrounding her administration. Keith Freeman, one of Henyard's most vocal allies, has taken an unorthodox approach to counter-criticism by shaming the media. In an aggressive tirade, Freeman accused local journalists of fixating on negativity rather than celebrating the township's supposed successes. With a condescending tone, he dismissed critical reporting as kid stuff and urged residents to verify the numbers themselves, insisting that the township's financial reports would prove Henyard's competence. But Freeman didn't stop there. He took the defense of Henyard to an almost prophetic level, declaring, "God doesn't make mistakes. He put the right person here, someone who can endure the lashes and have the strength to do the work." The message was clear. Henyard wasn't just a politician under fire. She was a chosen leader facing persecution, evading accountability with private meetings. As pressure mounted, Henyard shifted tactics, restricting media access and hosting private meetings to control the narrative. When reporters were finally allowed in, they noticed a disturbing pattern. Meetings were abruptly cut short as soon as the press arrived, fueling suspicions that Henyard was intentionally avoiding scrutiny. Meanwhile, tensions inside the township offices reached a boiling point. Freeman continued to double down, insisting there was no wrongdoing and attacking the media for focusing on gossip rather than township achievements. He even offered photo documentation upon request to prove that no sensitive materials had been mishandled during the office reshuffle. But these assurances did little to quell public distrust. Residents and critics alike felt Henyard's administration was more focused on optics than actual governance. A leader in freefall. Perhaps the most dramatic turn in Henyard's response to public outrage has been her attempt to frame her struggles as a spiritual battle. Rather than acknowledging legitimate criticisms, she has cast herself as a righteous figure, standing against unseen forces trying to undermine her leadership. Her team has subtly pushed the idea that the backlash against her isn't just political, it's personal, part of a larger scheme to dismantle the good work she claims to be doing. For some of her most loyal followers, this messaging may have been convincing. But for many, it was a transparent attempt to sidestep real issues. Residents and reporters alike took note of how often Henyard's rhetoric leaned into divine purpose rather than practical solutions. Instead of addressing concerns with transparency and decisive action, she appeared to be hiding behind religious platitudes, further alienating those demanding accountability. Despite all these maneuvers, Henyard's reputation continues to spiral downward. Her leadership is now defined by secrecy, deflection, and erratic decision-making. The office relocations, initially framed as a simple effort to enhance citizen services, have become a symbol of a much larger problem. Decisions made without transparency, oversight, or clear justification. A township left in the dark. Public trust in Henyard's leadership is eroding with every misstep. Her reluctance to engage openly with the community and her dismissive attitude toward valid concerns have only fueled growing doubts about her fitness for office. Instead of rebuilding confidence, she has relied on increasingly desperate defenses, blaming the media, invoking divine intervention, and evading direct questions. Meanwhile, Thornton Township is left to navigate its challenges alone. As scrutiny intensifies and public patience wears thin, one thing has become clear.
Bald-faced
Henyard's
example
grip on
of
power is slipping, and
Supervisor
no amount of
Henyard's
deflection
promise
can
of
change
come to
that.
the good things. There's so much
Her
good going on that we
administration's
want to
attempts
tell you
to control
about.
the narrative are failing.
We show up to
and
report
the
on
public's
it.
demand
We were
for
denied
accountability
So
is
that's what
louder
happened to
than
our
ever.
reporter, and
The
then at the
question
next
now
meeting that
is
you
not whether
attended,
Henyard's leadership is
we heard this.
sustainable,
Because
but
y'all
how
don't
much
want to do the
longer she
research.
can
Y'all keep
keep up
listening
the
to people,
illusion.
and no one's showing
Stay
you facts.
tuned as we
They keep
continue
telling
to
you
follow the
fiction,
unraveling
fake
of
stories,
Henyard's
fake news, just
administration.
like for real, stop. But go check, guys, if you really want to know the truth, so you can understand what it is that we're fighting over.
The drama
The controversy surrounding Tiffany Henyard is reaching a boiling point, with legal battles stacking up and her leadership under relentless scrutiny. Gonzalez, the very man who nominated Henyard, now claims he saw the red flags from day one. The moment the cameras turned off, he says she was in a frenzy, shouting, "What are they going to think now? What are they going to say now?" Clearly rattled by how the Dalton trustees would perceive her. The friction was there from the start, and it only escalated. Within her first year in office, Henyard was already embroiled in scandals, hiring an inspector who burned through taxpayer money without approval and allegedly using Dalton police as her personal security detail. Critics say her reckless leadership is draining village funds, forcing them to resort to legal action. Tensions boiled over at the annual meeting, where a 23-year-old South Holland resident called out township leaders for their lack of transparency. "You want us to participate, but from what I've seen, actions are being taken against the interests of the residents." The frustration was echoed by G.S. Watts, who pushed back against Henyard's claims that the community didn't support mental health initiatives. "This is not about you being a black woman. We're just tired. No one said we don't care about mental health. We just don't trust you to fix it." It's a pattern with Henyard, shutting out voices that challenge her. Former supporter Trina Diaz confronted her directly after being barred from a board meeting, questioning trustee Andrew Holmes' role in her decisions. Meanwhile, South Holland photographer Nate Fields spoke out about being fired after Henyard had personally assured him job security. "I just want to work for my community, but when grown men start threatening you, it's scary." The legal minefield surrounding Henyard keeps expanding. Wrongful termination lawsuits, accusations of favoritism, misuse of power. The list keeps growing. One lawsuit even names both Henyard and trustee Andrew Holmes, filed by a Dalton police officer who was once part of her security detail. And it's not just government employees. A barbershop owner says Dalton officials deliberately blocked his business license, and former maintenance manager Dwayne Thrash claims he was fired after refusing to replace a school board attorney with one of Henyard's hand-picked insiders. His lawsuit demands compensation and the removal of false performance claims from his record. Then comes the bombshell move. Dalton trustees bring in former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a federal prosecutor, to investigate Henyard at $400 an hour. Reports allege Henyard has used taxpayer money on lavish meals, luxury hotels, and high-end travel. When trustees voted to approve the Lightfoot investigation, Henyard didn't even show up. One major red flag, a Las Vegas trip where she allegedly misused government funds. Then there's the nearly $900,000 paid to a local prosecutor over 2 years, a prosecutor who didn't even have the power to file charges. And it doesn't stop there. In March, Henyard reportedly tried to obstruct an FBI investigation, threatening retaliation against anyone cooperating. The feds aren't playing around. Grand jury subpoenas have been issued, demanding records from Henyard's political committee, her cancer charity, her boyfriend, and 4 trustees, including 2 of her own relatives. And then there's Keith Freeman, her top aide, now charged with bankruptcy fraud. Investigators are digging into payments he received from multiple towns, including Robbins, which has also been subpoenaed. There's even speculation that Freeman's lawyers are negotiating his cooperation with federal investigators. Former FBI agent Wright believes this is just the beginning. The more investigations dig in, the more evidence, informants, and witnesses will come forward. And yet, despite the walls closing in, Henyard refuses to back down. She's playing the race card, accusing even fellow Black trustees of betraying their community. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. You are Black, and you're attacking a Black woman in authority. But the numbers don't lie. Over $112,000 in taxpayer-funded travel in just 1 year. Investigators found first-class airfare, a $99,000 stay at the Four Seasons in Atlanta, and a $133,000 bill from the Marriott Marcus in New York City. And let's not forget the infamous $26,000 Las Vegas trip. Critics argue that this isn't just bad leadership, it's a blatant abuse of power. Despite her 6-figure salary, Henyard's reckless spending, retaliatory firings, and shady financial practices paint the picture of a leader who has zero regard for accountability. With federal scrutiny intensifying, mounting lawsuits, and investigations uncovering alarming financial records, Henyard's attempts to dismiss this as fake news are falling on deaf ears. The people of Dalton are done footing the bill for her scandals. Now, the question isn't if she'll be held accountable, it's when.